What's up, my healthy friends? Welcome to today's episode of the show with me and future me. That joke will make sense if you see the video or a photo of the man sitting here with me. Anyhow, in 2023, it's my mission to coach 500 people to stop the binge eating and savage self-talk cycle so they can lose weight whilst feeling in control and without restriction along the way. Interestingly, one of the things about mastering your relationship with food, and in fact, anything that has any type of emotional hold over you, is to learn more about those emotions and feelings so that you can deal with them. Often the reason people overconsume anything, alcohol, drugs, porn, TV, and of course, food, is that they do this to suppress those emotions and bury them underneath a block of chocolate, a bottle of wine, and way too much cheese. And so I think this episode is going to be incredibly valuable to anyone that has, ever had a feeling, basically. I'd like to introduce you to Matthew Zoltan, whom is the author of Undo and the founder of Quiet Retreats and the creator of the Undo app. Not only does this great man have a fantastic name, but in the 80s, he was or is the pioneer of the body-mind connection. And over the last 35 years has led hundreds of silent meditation retreats, directly helped more than 30,000 people, and has also released a natural meditation app called Undo, which is spelled UNDO, which you can find inside the App Store on your phone. I've been using it, and it's absolutely 5 stars from me. So during Matthew's 7 years as a monk, which ended in 1986, he came to recognize the lack of relevance that traditional meditation had in real life. And I want you to take note of that word, the lack of relevance that traditional meditation had, despite the fact that these days we're told meditation will basically solve every problem we've ever had. So he set out to demystify meditation. His approach is not at all conventional, but it works immediately and is immensely effective. I've personally had an unexpected session with Matthew, which was a 30-minute catch-up call that turned into 2.5 hours of me absolutely pouring my broken heart out everywhere. And I can adamantly say that for me, this is the most logical, common sense approach to healing emotional anguish that I've ever come across. There is nothing mystical or woo-woo about it, yet most people have never heard of anything like this before. And so now that I've fluffed it up enough, I reckon we've got to get stuck into it. So Matthew, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you very much. What an introduction.
I'm so glad to
be here. Yeah, that was so good. Thank you.
So good. I mean, I've been just so in your world in the last few weeks and absorbing all of your information. And I think it's so fantastic. And I think everybody here is going to learn so much. But I'd love to start in the space of that lack of relevance of conventional meditation, because in the Western world, at least the world that I'm in, it really is the sort of the last thing in the line that everybody's told. Well, just meditate. You obviously need to meditate more. Fix your relationship, meditate. Fix your body weight, meditate. And so why, in this sort of era where everybody's becoming privy to meditation, are you sort of suggesting that it's got a lack of relevance?
Okay, well, it took me a while from a young person of 18 through to about the age of 27 to really understand the lack of relevance. And that period was a period of actually living as a yogi monk. So I've had really first-hand experience of not just traditional meditation, but taking that far into fairly outrageous spiritualities, if you like. Yeah. So the reason it has no relevance in day-to-day life, and particularly now, is because it's historic. It's all been handed down. And one thing I've mentioned here is that what we're looking for in meditation is essentially to know ourselves. You know, it's the first line. Why do we meditate? For self-realization or for our own enlightenment or our own understanding of ourselves, primarily. And this it leads to an understanding of the world we live in and other people from the deeper understanding of ourselves, enabling that. But with traditional meditations, it's not really about ourselves. It's about everything other than ourselves. So we're learning all these techniques, all these ideologies that have been handed down through the ages, and they're trumped up a bit, called ancient wisdoms. But I don't actually see wisdom being used in the correct or realistic terminology when we put ancient as a word next to it, mainly because once something is ancient, it's only remembered, meaning it's only now written in a book or spoken in a word or thought. Yeah. And thought and written in a book and spoken in word is very fixed and not relevant to an ongoing, ever-changing creature, not relevant at all. Not only that, as soon as the word is spoken, then there is a feeling behind it. It's from the person who speaks it. And if that feeling is transmitted between two people, then we get a connection with one another, and that helps one another or one or the other gain some wisdom or insight into themselves. Now, what brings that wisdom or insight out of the other person, out of the person speaking, is sensing the need in the other person, which is absolutely unique. Day by day, it changes. So over thousands of years, it's not going to be there. So whatever you read about will not be about you or relevant to you. Whatever you hear from history is not about you or relevant to you. What is relevant to you is coming into contact with a genuine person or yourself as a genuine person and actually getting a real and honest response to you and your condition. And this to me is wisdom. When I interact with someone, there's a sense of knowing that transmits between the two of us, or sense of understanding, which you had a taste of when we first met, actually, yeah? And it is genuinely there. I'm not saying I'm wise. I'm not trying to say that sort of nonsense. I'm just saying everybody has that. Everybody has a sense of knowing deep down in their bodies when they first come into contact with a situation or another person, but they tend to overlook that. And that sense of knowing is our initial wisdom about any situation. So once I say something, for example, and if there's wisdom in what I say, as soon as you think about it, you may interpret that, and your interpretation is going to be on the basis of your own thinking, your own experience, and your own biases, which is no longer the wisdom that I've expressed. So it doesn't take very long before that initial wisdom is lost. In fact, it takes one interaction. So this is why I say there's no such thing to me as ancient wisdom. But I'm still related to the question of why aren't all these traditional meditations working? Because the other thing is, with Eastern cultural gurus, meditation teachers, and very much Eastern cultural techniques, which is where meditation tends to come from, these people are heavily indoctrinated over thousands and thousands of years to be a certain way. That's why all gurus dress up in the guru costume, because they don't because they don't realize, this is my opinion, but they don't actually realize to what extent that conditioning is embedded in their traditional techniques, in their traditional forms of thinking, and talking about life. And so even when they talk about karma or reincarnation, these are not wisdoms. These are just cultural belief systems. Yeah. And so they're so indoctrinated by cultural views that have been handed down for thousands of years. They don't actually realize that. And it has the effect of disconnecting them from people. So you often get that feeling with gurus. You get that feeling with teachers. You get that feeling with anybody who's a little bit caught up in an idea or self-grandiosity, is that I'm an enlightened person, is because they actually don't realize to what extent they're not relatable, to what extent they're actually not relating to the here and now, even though that's the big theory. Yeah, it's not related to the here and now. It's not related to people now. It's not related to life now. It's only a theory about life. So ideologies and belief systems spoil our approach to meditation, because we start using meditation to achieve a certain state or result other than the one that we are currently in. Now, this is possible. Of course, all these meditation techniques enable you to do that if you use them enough, but they won't actually ultimately satisfy the individual, because that meditation is not about that individual. It's about some idealized human being or idealized state that really is not, in truth, achievable. It's only something we can self-hypnotize ourselves into through the use of these so-called meditation techniques, and only for short periods of time. That's why we have to use the darn things every day. Okay, so they don't work. They simply don't work. They're too superficial and too shallow. So this approach to meditation is what I call the outside-in approach. Outside being I'm using thoughts about myself, thoughts made up of, or techniques made up of thinking, made up of visualizations, made up of breathing, whatever it may be. I'm applying an ideology, I'm applying a direction to myself as a living organism that I must go in order to achieve that meditative state. So it's an outside-in approach. And this is the problem in the world generally, is that we're all influenced by the outside rather than influenced or allowed to live from the inside. Yeah. And living from the inside, living from the inside, I'm reliant on whatever is inside of me. And this is not an influence, actually. This is an expression coming from me, however I happen to be. So for me, meditation is nothing to do with an outside-in approach. This is ultimately a way of indoctrinating and hypnotizing people so they get some sort of relief, particularly those who, generally people don't know much about meditation at all. What's out there in the market is very, 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 very shallow, very watered down. Yeah. So people don't really understand meditation. And they think that which is out there in the marketplace is meditation. To me, it's not meditation. It's self-indoctrination. It's just more outside-in influences. So in this way...
Well, can I just add something in there?
Absolutely.
On that idea that it's the outside in and that sort of it's very superficial, what sort of came up for me as you were sharing that, and something that I've had the experience of with meditation and going through all of the different apps over the years and following the fads and, being told to level up that, I need to sit in silence. The thing that I've been challenged by as someone who, and possibly we're all the same, but my personal experience is that I'm a very emotional, passionate, connected person that really, loves having humans around and caring about people. And that the modern idea, or maybe the ancient idea that is now just brought forward with meditation, is that it's all about detachment and cutting myself off from things that I truly care about or truly evoke emotions in me, painful or happy, and that in order to become an enlightened being, I need to care about nothing. And I think the world that we're in also furthers that indoctrination with the idea of social media. Giving you all of the highlight reels of things that you'll never have, but you're meant to want, and interactions on social media, which people aren't there in real life, so they can just never reply to you. So you've got these superficial connections and sort of all these things that are about detachment and creating space between humans and the absence of community. And so the thing that I've really struggled with meditation is that the idea that I need to get myself to a place where I'm detached or I don't care about these things that I actually really do care about, and that when I'm not finally there after an hour of meditating, I go back to the person that's negatively affected by reality. And it took me a while to get detached and into that enlightened phase, but then I just returned to life where I'm like, oh, I haven't achieved it because I still care about this stuff, or it's still affecting me.
Yeah, this is very, very, very well considered. Thank you, what you've put to me there. So, the meditation that I help people understand, and I very much say understand, is based on a very factual, practical understanding of the human being and how we function. And this is necessary. So you need to understand something of yourself and how you function, but you also need to be able to access or recognize the experience of that. So it must be experiential, not just intellectual. Yeah, but there is a phase of intellectual understanding. When you combine that with your own experiential understanding, then you have something worthwhile. Yeah, then it becomes something of meaning to you. Now, the point you're making there. Oh, a lot of points you made there. That's okay.
Sorry.
So that's okay. So the point you're making there about detachment is very, very crucial actually to everything. This is a major problem. So with real meditation, the meditation is all about you. So being all about you, It's not about trying to reach another state, as you were saying. It's not about trying to reach a state that is not affected, a state that is not emotional, a state that is not feeling something or in pain or being affected by life, because none of that is the human being in its current condition. Yeah. And I will say that also I've been meditating for, I think, 45 years, and I had my major epiphany, I suppose, or my major transformation happened during the period of a monk, but not because of being a monk. It just happened to happen during that time. And this major transformation helped me see through that. And I was able to see that, yes, this meditation that I'm using is creating states of so-called enlightened states, so-called detached states, steady states. And, of course, I could maintain that, but only by the repetition of, one, accepting a belief system, and two, or a belief or an idea, like a detachment. And the other is imposing that on myself. And what that created actually was a disconnection, a disassociation from myself as the body. So we become highly spiritualized, highly mentalized. So we become a mental spiritual being, which is a mental spiritual concept of an image of what we are that is just created, just imagined. So once we step from the physical reality of ourselves as a body into this imagined state, we lose feeling, because this is something people don't understand a lot. You only are able to feel as a physical being. You do not feel once you're mentalizing. You do not feel the word love. You do not feel the word sadness. And you don't feel that outside of your body. You feel sadness in your body. Yeah. So you feel all feelings, all sensations as a live physical sensation in the body. Once you move into these meditation techniques that create a detachment from the body, it's not just techniques of meditation. You pointed out that the condition of our life on the internet, the whole thing you pointed out there was showing how, yes, it is a continuation of this theory of detachment from one another as human beings, disassociation, desensitization, numbing out and stupefying of the human being. I know that sounds pretty harsh, but it's exactly what it's doing to us. Yeah,
I think it's completely accurate. Yeah,
yeah, and it's been going on for thousands of years. There's nothing new about this. Religion were the first people to do this. Yeah, and I'm not saying that against religion, but by creating an extra fantasy about the life that we are, then we can opt for that fantasy any time we like in order to remove ourselves from the discomforts of life, which is primarily why I suggest why a person is interested in spirituality, religion, and so forth, is to find another place, another world, another life, another way to be, because they're frightened of life now, because they don't understand how to deal with life now. Detachment is merely the fear of being attached and the effects of that. It's the fear of living. So you want to be detached from life and the living, because you're frightened of the feelings that you will have, the sensations you will have if you don't. And you've also been indoctrinated to think somehow you are a less enlightened person if you are affected. But the fact is, you are an alive person if you're affected. I personally am the most sensitive person I know of, and I'm not saying that as a comparison. It's just that I only know myself as that sensitized creature. So I personally am a very sensitized creature, and I can't help but be affected by everyone and everything, including the shift of the stars and the moons and so on. We're full of water and so forth, made up of so many things that are part of this world. And as we are part of this world, made up all the things that are part of this world, we are very, very much connected and affected to this world, so long as we recognize ourselves as a live, feeling, thinking, physical being, physical body being. And when we see that live, feeling, thinking, physical body being, we're now not talking about spirit. We're not talking about spiritualities. We're not talking about anything beyond life as we, all of us, can logically and fairly easily know it, because we have access to that knowing. When it comes to spirituality, when it comes to the myth of enlightenment, which I think is a myth, enlightenment is a myth, we're suggesting that we should be in this state that is fairly consistent and unaffected by everything. But if I'm unaffected by you or anything else, there is no way for me to understand my environment, no way for me to know my environment when I am unaffected. Yeah, I need to be affected. The problem isn't being affected, but what is lacking from these traditions is the understanding of what we do with what we are affected by, what we do with these effects. Now, and it's very, very simple. When we mentally react to these effects, these feelings in ourselves, then we create the distress, the pain, and the suffering that we experience and that we think we need to be detached from in order to be a stable person. So the problem isn't, we don't need to be detached. It's just if I'm not unattached, if I'm not detached, then I am actually alive. I'm a living being. And that is our natural state. This is the other thing. You will not be detached from someone unless you are distracting yourself into ideas or thoughts, and you won't be detached from your own feelings unless you are distracting yourself from your thoughts and your feelings and your state into some idea or some distraction that has pretty much nothing to do with how you are. So in this way, you actually are not enlightened. You are rendering yourself completely ignorant to your own condition, because your own condition, your own self, your own sense of yourself is the living presence of you, which is only known in the feeling sensory body. It's not known through the words that we think. Yeah, it can't be known that way.
It's funny, we've got like spirituality on one end, which sort of says enlightenment is being unaffected. And then on the other end, we've got modern psychology, which says if you are unaffected by people, then you're probably a narcissistic psychopath.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of the problems. Narcissism is a real problem in spirituality. Yeah, it's a huge, because spirituality is all about I'm going to be a better and a higher being than the one I am now. So it's all we talk about detachment, talk about resolving the importance of me, whereas in fact it's all about the importance of me, because it's me trying to be a better me all the time. And this is the major flaw in religion and spirituality, is that there is, firstly, why are we trying to be a better me? Because we are, without realizing it, in reaction to the me that I already am, or the person that I am. Now, why am I in reaction to that? Because I've been told there's a better way to be. In society, every aspect of society, including religions and spiritualities, are encouraging us to be a better person, than the one that we are, right from when we're born, or not exactly when we're born, but not very long after we're born. We're encouraged that it's important. You're here for a purpose, and you have to improve on yourself. You have to learn something. Whereas this is not something that I have any experience of. To me, this is not the reality of life. The reality of life is I was born complete, and I came into this world. I, in fact, came out of this world. If I'm talking the reality and facts here, I was born from my mother's womb, and my mother's womb is the beginning of my life as I can possibly know myself, without using thoughts or fantasies of any other kind, or drugs and so on, psychedelics, etc., without using any manipulation of my chemistry, which I can assure you, as a monk, I did tons of, not through drugs, but through meditation techniques through which you could manipulate your chemistry, therefore manipulate your experience of what you thought was still yourself, but of course was not. It was a manipulated diversion from yourself. But back to what I'm saying, the spiritualist and the religious person have this notion that we are something that came into the world from somewhere else, wherever the hell that may be. Everyone's got their own version of that. And we came into the world meaning that we're not really part of this world. We're here to learn something, improve on ourselves, and evolve to another state. So this, straight away, we're seeing ourselves, we're presuming that we are somehow flawed and we are here to improve. This has not been my experience, and I do not agree with that at all. And I see the harm of this. My experience is that I came into this world to express something unique. And for some reason or another, that's what I've spent my life doing. I'm entirely myself. I am influenced by society, of course, but only to a point, and only to the point that I can interact with it. But there is a solid sense of myself that seriously hasn't changed. I'm 63 years old. I've never learned anything. I've never improved on anything. I've learned information, but I've never increased myself or improved myself or enhanced on myself ever. All I've ever done is try to regather myself, or not try to, but I've managed to regather myself and heal myself and decondition myself whenever I've been affected in a way that actually brings me down from the fact of myself as I am. So to me, I'm not in this plan. I haven't come here to achieve something. I've come out of the world and as an expression of our world, of our planet, of our natural world, in order to bring something new and unique into the world. And that's exactly what I've lived my life doing. I know that from within myself, because I've found what has brought that about is I see the problems of the world, which stimulates a unique and a new response to that from inside of what I was born to be. So I was born to be whatever person I've become. And I say, this is nothing special. This is unique. This is common to all of us. We all were born to express something unique, but we haven't allowed the babies to grow unfettered by how we've trained them to be. So we've gradually distorted that individual and given the individual the ideology that you need to get educated, you need to learn things, and you need to improve on yourself in every possible way, which is, what is this? The message inherent in that is that you are somehow flawed and incomplete as you are, which simply is not true. But as long as you go with that and you're trying to improve yourself, you're giving yourself that message constantly, undermining any achievement you might get that would never satisfy you, because underneath that you're saying, I'm just not good enough. And the action of trying to improve yourself is only confirming that deep belief in yourself that I'm not good enough. And this is not a belief that we are born with. This is the societal distortion of the human species, is that this is how I see it. We have distorted our experience of life because what you said before with detachment, we've disconnected from our natural self. We've disconnected from nature. And the evidence is out there in the world, is that we are the most destructive creatures to ourselves because we criticize, we judge, we run ourselves down, because we've been taught to think this way. We've had experiences that confirm that, so we still think that way, which has actually been done to us by other people. But no experience of ourself, other than the harm, that's the effect that's left inside of us from being traumatized. Otherwise, there is no experience of ourselves that backs up that we are inadequate, that we are lesser. This is a big statement. It's hard for people to get to at first, but this is something I help people get to, is that you're not here to improve yourself. I'm here to help you see that you don't even know that whether you like or dislike yourself. You're not in a position to judge or criticize yourself until you have experienced yourself as you really are. And that means you have to experience yourself without the effects of that judgment, changing how you feel about yourself. So you've got to get past that in order to even experience yourself as you really are, however those feelings may be inside of you, and then tell me whether you like yourself or not. And what I would suggest is you will find out for yourself and from yourself, not from the world outside of you and not from me, but for yourself and from yourself. You will discover, in feeling yourself as you are, you will ultimately discover that you don't dislike these feelings of yourself. You don't, they're not wrong. They're not bad. They're there for a reason. and they will take you deeper into the healing process of anything that needs to be healed. And they, you will find, are exactly what you want in your life. You want those feelings if you know how not to react to them. And that's why no understanding is needed. Whereas in the traditions, they don't understand reaction. It's such a simple thing. They don't understand that through reaction, through thinking harshly and the wrong ways about ourselves, we suffer. No matter what condition you're in, really, pain of any level, if we don't judge it and criticize it, but if we learn to feel it as a sensation in the body, the suffering of it decreases till it's not there. And what actually is there is a relief. It's a relief to feel your sadness. It's a relief to finally feel that grief. It's even a relief to feel strong physical pain and trauma. It's a relief to feel it, because when you feel it, you're in touch with it. Once you're in touch with it, it starts to change. It starts to heal. Up until that point, it just feels stuck. And so you feel frustrated and you feel at odds with that. And this is where demystifying meditation to being all about the body has been what I've been doing. Demystifying it to being all about the sensations of you in the body and having really nothing to do with your thinking at all. Because thinking is a learned thing added on top. It's not something that is important in meditation. What's important is what causes you to have those thoughts about yourself, and that is a deeper feeling or sensation of you inside of you. Once you're in touch with that, it starts to heal and process. You start to become comfortable with the way you are, and also as you get in touch with those feelings, your thinking just dissipates. So thinking ceases to be a problem in meditation with the right approach. And traditional approaches are not the right approach to reaching that depth of yourself, because it's got to be in the body. So I think you go ahead. I think I said a lot there.
Yeah, I want to go off on so many tangents, but the first one that I want to come to is because I really want to talk about exactly what you mean by feeling and emotion and those words, because I think in the world of of anybody listening that wants to is interested in growth and change and exposure to different things, that clarifying what you mean with those things is important. But first, in contrary to the idea that you're sharing, and just maybe a bit of a challenge that's coming up for me that I want to talk about, is this idea that being in pursuit of wanting to be better is fundamentally judging poorly who you are now. I can understand that idea. However, the only way for me to have ever found you is to have been incredibly interested for a very long time in wanting to be a better version of myself, because the previous version of me did damage, did harm to other people, did harm to myself, caused a tremendous amount of loss through my choices, through my reactions to life, which were arguably based in trauma. And so this idea that of people wanting to be better and being disappointed with where they're at in the current iteration of the matrix that we're all plugged into, that is what that exact mentality is how I came to find you, right? And so with all of the answers, and the answers are possibly different for everybody, in order for us to arrive at the place where we're like, oh, I am fine, there is nothing wrong with me, I am okay, I am worthy of love. I feel like in this world that we're in, where it is a very thinking-based world, we need to think that way in order to arrive there eventually.
Yeah, this is fair enough. And this is the paradox. This is the difficulty. So up until this point, it's got you to this point. But that person you were, who was destructive and traumatized and so forth, and destructive to yourself and destructive to other people, was also the person that you yourself didn't have a way of, I'm jumping a little bit here, tell me it's not true, but there was a person that you yourself didn't have a way of really understanding. Yeah?
Correct.
So in that state of being destructive, in that state of being traumatized, in that state of being miserable and so on, and you wanted to be a better person, that's what you knew. And so this is totally understandable. But at that point, you didn't have the understanding of the significance of the person you were. You had no way of really understanding the person you were and why you were the way you were. So you just continued to be that way. You had no way to do anything else with it. Yeah. And so you've done well to get yourself this far, to be honest. Yeah. But still, that it's so in that sense, it seems like it's not a bad thing. And really, that's a very interesting paradox, because ultimately, I don't really think anything that happens in life is necessarily a bad thing, so long as one day you wake up to the fact of it. Yeah. And if you don't ever wake up to the fact that you were a destructive, traumatized, so on person, then that is going to just continue and into more destructiveness and more misery. Yeah. So does that make sense? So
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And another paradox is that, yes, we can improve ourselves on a physical level. If I want bigger biceps, well, I can go to the gym and I can improve on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really, that's an improvement on a physical, tangible level. I can improve my situation financially. I can improve myself with knowledge and so forth. This is all fairly superficial. Knowledge that I can use to get a new degree and therefore improve the quality of my material life. Nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to the understand ourselves as we actually are as a living being, what I'm suggesting is that is not something we can, the more we try and improve on that, the more we keep ourselves spinning our wheels, because when we're trying to improve on that, we don't realize that we are also undermining ourselves in that. So it's very difficult. It's easy enough to improve the standard of your life and therefore improve bits and pieces throughout your life, get a happier lifestyle, a healthier lifestyle. This is absolutely essential part of life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we can do it without the misery. we can do it without
sign me up.
Without the misery of overriding ourselves, because that part of ourselves doesn't fit with our goals in that part of our life. Yeah. So if we're trying to improve ourselves in that process, I think you'll find you've probably caused yourself a bit of harm at times too, because you've ignored yourself or overridden yourself or forced yourself to do things that weren't necessarily taking in the full picture of yourself, because at that time you wouldn't know how to include that damaged part of yourself in the healthy behaviors that you were learning and introducing into your life. Would that make any sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, because they're very much parts that feel completely out of control and even unconscious, and it took many times around the cycle in order to be able to become aware and see it, that sort of metacognition thing of thinking about what's actually happening, thinking about thinking and being, and I felt like for me that was the first step, is that, I can observe a layer of thought with another layer of thought. And that was the first step of seeing myself for what's really happening, rather than reacting, not really remembering what happened because I was so in an automatic response to a trigger or to a situation, and then afterwards being like, I don't even remember what happened, because it was so, maybe you could even argue, animalistic and just a total raw expression of pain and suffering or lack of control or whatever it is.
Yeah, interesting enough when you say animalistic, it's a very good term. However, and I don't ever see animals, unless they're traumatized, which is only domesticated animals, but you don't really see animals operating in this disconnected, uncertain way. They're very certain about what they do. They don't feel, the lion doesn't feel, I've just killed an antelope. He doesn't sit down and have a session with himself over it. He's not upset about that. It's completely within the boundaries of his natural world. Yeah. So he's doing what
he doesn't need to process his guilt.
No, he doesn't have
he
guilt.
Exactly.
So his life is very much driven by his natural state, and which is not, I would argue, is not unconscious at all. It's entirely a felt state, a feeling state, a feeling of hunger and so on. Yeah, a feeling of, it's not rage. It's not I want to hurt that animal. So I want to eat that animal. It's ultimately I need the most powerful, one of the two most powerful urges we have is the urge to survive. And every single animal has that. And the other one is to procreate. Yeah. So, and this is all to do with very basic very basic urges. Now, when you're saying it gets paradoxical, but it's not. It actually will be clear is that we see that, yes, I can go and improve myself on a physical level. But you think of this. Let's say I make a lot of money and I've improved myself on a financial level. Yeah. So, and I've experienced that. I've experienced being a multimillionaire. I've experienced being broke, all sorts of things, in my life in this way. Now, it didn't ever change the way it felt to be me. And this is a crucial thing, because when you identify with physical or with material improvements, when you identify with those, you build an image of yourself based on that success. And that image of yourself says, I've improved myself, and you feel like you're an improved version of what you are. But you've just built an image of yourself on what you are, and you've lost contact with yourself in the real sense of yourself. In a sense, what happens when we do that is we lose touch with our humanity. We lose touch with our vulnerability. We lose touch with our reality. Yeah, that the fact that we are a feeling, emotional, a sensory being, on a basic level, we all have the same needs. We all have the same problems. When you're dealing with a relationship problem, I'm dealing with a relationship problem. $10 million in my bank account or zero doesn't make a lot of difference to the struggle of the relationship problem. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I relate to that completely. Yeah. In my little business journey, and it's still very little, and going from a day job and earning a little bit more money, and having the freedom to work from anywhere and do my own life, I really realized that in the last couple of years that, heartbreak, particularly just because you brought it up, or relationship troubles, my life situation is absolutely irrelevant to the pain that I experience. And it's the same pain that I've ever felt in any of those contexts my whole life. And it's like, doesn't matter if I've got a Ferrari, and not that I've ever had one, but, it doesn't matter the amount of resources that I have. Yeah, the lived experience is identical.
But the lived experience is identical. The real experience is identical. But through those things, through having a Ferrari, through having that image of yourself, that image can become so powerful, so strong, so overbearing that you actually lose touch with yourself. You lose touch with that humanity in yourself, and you become what you said before about that. That's another form of detachment, but it's detachment from what you are into what you want, and becoming attached to what you have or what you want. And this is, okay, you can have all those things, but can you have all those things and see that you're not identified with those things? And the identification with those things gives you the sense of you are improving on yourself, whereas you've only improved your circumstance and your situation. And that doesn't make you feel any better in yourself. And so this is where we're starting to now see the divide between self-improvement and improvement on a material, tangible level. We can improve scientifically, but we can't, scientifically we get, better world on a material level to live in. But science does not have anything to do with self-understanding. And it never will, because self-understanding is to do with the lived experience, as you put it, the lived experience. It's not something you can sit back scientifically or theoretically and become the observer of that. You can't observe that experience, because as soon as you observe it, you change it. As soon as you observe yourself, you're not really, I won't go too far into this because it's a little bit off track, but the scientist needs a subject and an object. There's an object that the subject observes and works out. Now, and even the observance, depending on what we're trying to prove to ourselves because of our bias, being a scientist, we may see it this way, we may see it that way. So it's very, very flawed stuff. It gets really, really messy, and it can be manipulated depending on our bias.
So easily.
And as we see in medical science today, all science is, so much manipulation of the outcomes so that we can sell a product or sell a drug and so on, And so this is the thought process of the human being. And the thought process of the human being is entirely different, and I will explain maybe during this talk, is entirely different from the sensory process of the human being. So the sensory process of the human being is singular. There is no argument. If you feel sad, you feel sad. If you feel hot, you feel hot. If you feel angry, you feel angry. If you feel hungry, you feel hungry. There's no question about it. It is a physical sensation. Now, this is the way we need to operate. We cannot improve on this. If we cannot improve on our state, with the reason we feel upset is because we are supposed to feel upset. Now, I'm going to bring in the understanding that people get from the Undo app to really clarify this, and that is that we have been taught to think, because we don't live up to the ideal picture of the human being, and because we have all these other feelings that we're told are wrong or bad, or, we're sadness, we're depressed, we're traumatized, we can't think straight, like you said about yourself in the past, you are destructive to yourself, destructive to other human beings, which all of us have been. Yeah, let's face it, we all have been. You only have to look out there and see how destructive the human being is to the human being. We're the only creature on the planet that we have good cause to be terrified of. And so because we're insane, because we've lost touch with our sanity, we've lost touch with our humanity, and so what is that? We've been traumatized. We've been treated badly because the people before us have been treated badly. We've been taught to think things about the world and about ourselves that are absolute fantasies and disconnected from anything of any purpose or reality because of religion and spirituality, and because of propaganda, because of other influences, because of people in power wanting to have some control over the mass or the group that they're in control of. So they feed them what thoughts to think about themselves and about the world. I'm just chucking something in there. It's just an outside-in influence. Okay. Now, we've been hurt in many ways. We've been disconnected from our true selves in many ways, our true organic selves in many ways. And when we're traumatized as a kid, we will, I'll use that as an example, just a child being traumatized, which most children are, then what's happened, even on a mild level, to be told that you're not good enough as you are, and therefore live the rest of your life trying to achieve the unachievable, which is a better you. And I'm going to explain this in a minute as I'm talking. This is not a better you. If I am angry, if I'm upset, if I can't relate sexually in relationships, or I can't relate emotionally in relationships, I think there's something wrong with me and I need to improve on that. And I see that condition as the problem. My pain, my sickness, my mental condition, my emotional condition as the problem. It's not the problem at all. It's exactly the way you should be, and actually it's a sign of the perfection. It's a proof of the perfection of life unfolding as an expression of itself every day. Meaning that if you've been treated a certain way, you will end up in a certain condition. And that condition is exactly how you should be. There is nothing incorrect about the condition the most damaged person is in. They've obviously been through something very harmful. Yeah. And if they weren't in that condition, even the psychological profession will say, if someone's died, and you don't feel any loss or any grief, then you are not in a good state. You are disconnected from what you need to be feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I've been abused as a child in any form, then this is going to change my view of myself, my view of the world, based on the child's world still being a part of my makeup. Yeah. And I will operate in these ways that don't fit into the adult that I become. Because when I become an adult, it's time for me to function sanely and correctly. I don't have so many excuses. I'm not a child anymore. Yeah, it's time for me to mature and grow up. But we find it difficult to mature and grow up because the child inside of us, and I don't mean something like the inner child, I'm not talking on that level, I'm just saying the damage that is inside of us has not been resolved along the way. When it hasn't been resolved along the way, then we end up with these strange behaviours. Now, what are these behaviours? What are these conditions? They are the things our health, our mental and physical health, and our personalities and our actions in the world are the expressions of not our original nature, but as a born child, but of the how that was imposed upon by the life we've lived up until the point of becoming an adult, just as an example. And that doesn't just stop once we're an adult. It continues until we can do something about it. But what we do when we don't know what to do, we say it's wrong, it's bad. Society says it's wrong, it's bad, even though society is predominantly the cause of that condition in the human being that's wrong and bad. So in that sense, as a society, we are entirely responsible for the people in our world that are damaged and now damaging us in return. Okay? Why are they damaging us? Is that because they're wrong? No, that's because they have been taught to live in a damaged state. That's all they know. And this is how they behave. They don't want to behave that way. When they start to become more aware of this, they don't want to behave that way. No, I've got to improve on myself. This is where we make the first mistake. No, you have to understand yourself. Yeah, understand that this is perfection. That I am operating with I'm in a sexual relationship and I'm operating with certain resistance to having sex with my partner. I will have feelings in me that I don't understand. And these will be the feelings in this example. These could be and usually are the feelings of some very horrible sexual experiences as a younger person that I've been forced to suppress because it was overwhelming for a child. It's not correct for a child to have those experiences. They're not ready. Yeah, and so I'm traumatized during my life as a child in my sexuality being imposed on me by adults, then or older people, and then when I come in to try and have a relationship with another human being, and I'm a sexually developed man or woman, I find I have difficulty in enjoying that sexuality because it puts me in touch with all these other awful feelings that really put me off sex, let's say. Yeah. Now, this is not wrong. I haven't got a problem. I have something unfinished. This is a part of me that is saying, okay, before you can enjoy sexuality, I need you to heal your sexual pain. You need to heal your sexual pain that you've lost touch with, that you've lost association with, that you've completely suppressed or blocked. How do we do that? How we do that is we have to live in admission to and in touch with the person that I am as a result of everything I've been through. And by feeling the distress that I have having had the sexual relationship, this is extremely difficult for people to do without guidance at first and without good understanding. And I'm taking in the most extreme case here rather than just say other addictions, which we can talk on. So what do I need to do is I need to be with those feelings and go ahead and have a healthy sexual relationship with my partner now anyway. And in being with those feelings, they will gradually come to the surface more and more and more. And by feeling those awful feelings, I will be processing those feelings. For at last, those feelings are being triggered by the only thing that can trigger them. If I have sexual pain, the only thing that's going to trigger my sexual pain is sex. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not having a beer, not having a chat with someone. It's got to be in the reality of me trying to be the part of me trying to be part of the human being that I am. Part of me is to procreate, to be a sexual human being because I've got genitals, so that's part of me. But when I come to doing that, I find that locked up in my genitals, locked up in those parts of me, in that feeling of me as a woman or a man, is a lot of very nasty feelings. Makes it very hard for me to process, or makes it very impossible for me at first to deal with that scenario. So being with those feelings, and this is a big part of what people have to learn, we'll learn through the app and through working with me, is we have to learn to feel those feelings in order to process and heal through those feelings. And this is exactly how you do it. Rather than avoid the pain, rather than saying there's something wrong with me, I've got to get rid of this, which is a misunderstanding, you say, oh, this is not something wrong with me. This is something I need to take an interest in. And if I take an interest in it, I'm now becoming interested in those parts of myself that I've lost contact with, that life is now triggering inside of me, causing me to re-experience all over again. Now it's time. How do I know it's time to heal these things? Because I'm in a circumstance that I need to be healthy in and I'm unable to be. So I'm going to keep staying in this circumstance. Understanding how to be with those feelings and not reacting to them means that I won't project those into the circumstance of my adult life and screw that up. But I'll use the circumstance of my adult life to help me fix this up. And I'm not fixing something that's wrong. I'm responding to something that is definitely not wrong. I'm not wrong for being in that condition. It is a perfect carry-on of life continuing to hold that inside of us, we as life, continuing to hold that inside of us until we're ready and able and in a circumstance to deal with it and heal it. And we have lots of things to heal. And this is the perfection of nature, not the imperfection of not the difference between an ideal person and a damaged person. Being a damaged person does not mean you are not absolutely perfect still. That is your natural state. You naturally are like that, as you should be. But learning to not react to that, learning to deal with that correctly, has not been part of our history, our culture, our belief systems, or our medical system ever. And this is what I'm finding is very unique about what I'm bringing into the world, because I'm just doing what I feel I was born to do. Be myself. And in being myself, I don't mean that some mystic. I'm not a prophet. I mean some mystical way. I don't mean that. I found out I've got to find out how to deal with these things myself, because society's not. And I did. I didn't find out how to deal with them. I found out how myself as a living organism deals with them. And I realized there's nothing wrong with me when I'm being destructive, but I'm just out of touch with, not really in contact with, the feelings in me that eventually express as destructive thoughts and behaviors.
Yeah. And I know that it's probably implied by what you said, and obviously, it makes total sense in the context of sexual trauma that all of that stuff is brought up once you engage in sexuality and it's triggered and that happens. And then I guess for many people that have, relationship challenges, life challenges, it's all the other things too. The way that I've experienced trust in a family, or the way that I've experienced love in a family. And then you go out into the world and you sort of feel relatively together until you enter a situation in which that experience is now being had as an adult, but has a few stories from the past and a few experiences from the past that have, quote unquote, damaged or broken or fractured something within you. And then, of course, you react to it and push it away or try and get away from it because you haven't sat with and understood that part of yourself to a point where it's an acceptable part of yourself and it comes out of you in a managed way.
Exactly. This is why I ceased being a monk, because you do not have this opportunity of real life as a monk. And because you don't have this opportunity of real life, you're not put in touch with most of what you're able to override in the monastic environment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In real life, this is the place where a person becomes enlightened. Is in real life. And I don't mean enlightened in the mystical sense. It's an awful word. In the real sense, in the tangible sense, one needs to understand themselves. Yeah, you need to understand yourself. And you're going to get, but the thing is, we will only get that understanding of ourselves from ourselves, because only we are ourselves. No one knows us as we will be able to know ourselves once we learn to feel again. So knowing ourselves is when we feel we are hot, we are cold, we are sad, we are distressed, we know we are that way. Yeah. And we only know that because we can feel it. I only know I exist because I can feel it. I only know my hand exists as long as I can feel it. If you inject it with something, and if it's
Anesthetized.
Yeah, that's the word. It was anesthetized. I can look at the damn thing, I can think about it, but I can't really know it exists. I can't feel my existence as a hand.
Yeah,
Feeling
it's a bizarre experience when that happens.
It's bizarre, yeah. So really, our felt sense of ourself as a body is feeling the very presence and the condition of ourselves as we are at whatever point we are in our life, which is not a better or worse point than any other point we are in our life. But that's very difficult for people to get at first because of traditional belief systems around this. So you are never at a better or worse point. I'm not at a better point now in my life than I was when I was younger. I'm at a different point. And in some ways that makes it easier. Yeah. In other ways, I find it more difficult to go for a 20-kilometre run. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do a 5 or 10-kilometre run. Yeah. So it's different. It's always, So anyway, back to what we were talking about on the serious, your point is you come into life, you deal with life, and why can't we deal with life is because we don't know how to accept ourselves and what isn't acceptance of ourselves. Now, when you're triggered, what's being triggered, I know most people know this, what's being triggered is whatever you have been unaware of in yourself. Now, there's nothing wrong with being unaware of that. It's no point until you actually are triggered by a situation in which you have to then express yourself based on that quality, whether it's not the distrust and the trust issue. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when you feel distrust in a relationship, at first this isn't clear, but after a person has even after they've done this undo app and worked a little bit in this way, they start to see there's a difference between what feelings that are about my life now and feelings that are actually an emerging of my life in the past. We get very tangled up in those and we can't tell the difference. And it's very important to get better at understanding the difference. It's not an intellectual understanding. Well, it is. It's partly intellectual, but it's more experiential. It comes to you. Mm-hmm. So when you have distrust and you go, you look at the facts of the person in your life, and there's no real fact for you to base your distrust on. Then that fact is the thing you can trust. Yeah, there's the fact. Yeah, there's no real fact for me to base my distrust on. Therefore, my distrust is most probably nothing to do with this person and nothing to do with my life now. Most probably a continuation of the experiences that I've not yet resolved from my past experiences with other people. So being in a relationship with someone you can trust is very helpful to this. It will cause paranoia, it will bring up paranoia and imaginary distrust of this other person. But as long as that person continues to operate in a way of being trustworthy, and that person, and you embrace the facts of what you see, even though your paranoia tries to twist that and imagine it's not really happening the way it is, then because it's got to be something wrong with it, then over time your distrust is brought out of you the whole time you're in this relationship because you're being challenged. It's being challenged the whole time, but it comes up as a feeling of fear and paranoia, and then it becomes imaginary. You've got to be very, very careful of allowing it to become the thought process of imaginary assumptions. Yeah. And then, so what you do is you bring it back to the feeling of how you feel when you're feeling the distrust. You must feel the distrust, and that's how you start to process the old. That's how you process the leftover of a past experience. You have to feel the distrust. But the benefit you have if you're with a new person is you also have the facts of somebody acting trustworthy in a trustworthy way. And that gives you a type of anchor in reality, which is in the world now, in the world of your life now. You see that this feeling doesn't really relate to the world. So I see it, relates to our bigger world, of course, being not trusting people, but in our personal world with one other person. And so this helps us to not only get in touch with our distrust, but start to see, if we approach it properly, which is to feel the distrust and remind ourselves that this is most probably something that I used to be like before. If it is something you used to be like before, then it's a bit unfair to immediately attach that to the next person. But we do. Yeah. And that's what screws the relationships up. So we come into the relationships, which people also don't realize. And that is, we think we want to come into the relationship to get what we want because we've been indoctrinated with the Romeo and Juliet syndrome. And we've been indoctrinated with the happy, happy, joy, heavenly world that we think exists. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
commonly referred to as the Disney effect.
Oh, thank you. The Disney, that's a much better, the Disney effect. And there is no such thing because there doesn't need to be such a thing. That is not reality. We only want that reality, by the way, when we don't have the maturity and the understanding to deal with the real reality. When we don't know how to deal with attachment, we want detachment. When we don't know how to deal with pain, we want pleasure. Yeah, but when we don't understand, more importantly, the significance of pain to our own well-being, we want pleasure. But when we understand the significance of the pain of feeling distrust in a relationship, we want that relationship to keep putting me in touch with that because you are helping me uncover pain in myself that I am affected by, that controls me, that rules me. And I've had this for so many years. How am I going to get over this? You're going to get over this in the trenches of life, in the realities of life, if you have the right approach. Firstly, that there is nothing wrong with you feeling distrust. It just may not be related to now. It's related, it's been there before, so there's a good chance you can accept that, okay, this is something from my past and this is a new person in my life. Now, how can I bring those two together? Best thing is you get into a relationship not to have the Romeo and Juliet Disney syndrome. You are going into a relationship with a person, particularly sexual relationships, because they encompass everything, which you don't have with other people, the sex side of it. And this brings an intimacy, this brings a depth. This causes you have to dig deeper inside of yourself to be in touch with that person than you ever have before. And you'll find things inside of yourself reaching into those depths because they're trying, as the relationship deepens, there's more demands put on you to be more of yourself than you've ever had to be before. You can't just be that superficial, silly person. You really have to you're investing in a relationship, which means you have to become more authentically you, both the shit and the honey, both the stuff you love and the stuff you hate. That starts to come into the picture, which before you could hide that in more superficial relationships. So everybody thinks we're going to get into a sexual relationship and you're going to be just the way I want you to be. Well, you're being just the way I need you to be, but you may not be the way I want you to be, because the way I want you to be is make me feel good. The way I need you to be is to put me in touch with both feeling good, but also feeling the shit that I haven't recovered from yet. And then we come into the relationship, and the relationship is now a way of self-developing, a way of healing ourselves from that which we haven't had to go to the depths of before. And then we start to realize these reactions we have to our partner that say, oh, I hate this person, I don't like your behavior, rather than projecting it onto that person, bringing it back to, well, I'm actually reacting to this person. And this reaction is coming out of me. And this reaction is exposing something in me that I don't like the feel of. If I don't like the feel of, it means I don't like this part of me. Now, as we start to come to terms with the feeling of this part of me, then we find ourselves more comfortable with that same feeling or part in the other person. So the more we become at ease with ourselves in pain or pleasure, and that's what this natural meditation actually does. The more we are prepared and able to live at ease with the greater complexities of other people and the world we live in without being frightened of that and disturbed by that. If we're not frightened of it in ourselves, we won't be frightened of it in the world.
Yeah, I think Everything you've just shared is fantastic, and to connect it to a previous part of our conversation, I think as well in regards to the modern dating landscape, marriage landscape. It's that same idea of detachment, because online dating and options everywhere on Instagram and TikTok and all these people that you can connect with and perceive the grass to be greener. I think there's a real lack of resilience in relationships now because it's so easy to get away from the pain. It's so
Yeah,
easy to be triggered and run. I
yeah,
would say that across the board, because
absolutely.
once upon a time you didn't have the option of going to
Yeah,
pick up your kid from school and meeting another parent. So let's just say it's a man picking up the kids, meets the kid's friend's mum, and that was the only interaction you had with that woman. Now you can go home and add her on Facebook and see if she's going to be at soccer on the weekend, and you grow these perceived opportunities of the grass is greener everywhere. And so it's back to that detachment, because we've got the option to detach from the suffering of our current relationship and just be like, oh well, it's going to be way nicer over there. So
yeah.
again, another opportunity to just move out, move away. But also possibly the Disney effect, has that idea that the relationship you got into in the beginning was also going to be beautiful and magical all of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's just this self-repeating cycle that's where we're chasing a rainbow or the unicorn that's not really there.
It's not there, and it's not supposed to be there, and it shouldn't be there. It's not healthy. It's born of thousands of years of religion telling us that there's a heaven and an enlightened state to be in. And then it's born of society telling us in different ways that, if you've got a lot of money or you've got this or you look beautiful and so on, then you're going to be a happy person. It's still all about happy, happy, joy, joy, pleasure. Yeah, it's
Mm.
half of our life is being ignored. Half of our life, which gives us depth and substance as a human being and maintains our humanity and our sensitivity and our empathy for other human beings.
Yeah,
Yeah, if we don't
makes
have
total sense.
yeah, if we don't feel pain, we will lose empathy. If we avoid pain, we will avoid anybody else in pain because we don't like it. But just back
Yeah,
to the very interesting thing you said was, we see this person on Facebook and we create a fantasy. Yeah, we
yeah,
create a fantasy of the other person. Now, what is this? Just like religion and meditation techniques and traditional meditations, they create fantasies of another world that doesn't exist other than in their own thought processes. Yeah. And you know how powerful that is. You can create a fantasy about someone. Next thing you know, you can have all sorts of experiences and feelings that are connected to that fantasy. You can ultimately become obsessed and feel like you're in love with that person. You can have, horny dreams about that person. You can have all sorts of physical and emotional fantasies. In the same way, when using meditation techniques or following theories of spirituality, whatever you think about over and over again eventually becomes a conjured and a conjuring of experiences. If you think that you are a spirit and a bodiless being, eventually, if you use the right meditation techniques, you will experience bodiless states all over the place in all many different ways. But none of it's real. It feels real. The feeling is real. The effect is real. But the fantasy that got you there is a total delusion. Yeah. And
mm.
so, what is this? This is all, to me, when we've got struggles in our relationship at home. I'm relating religion and relationships together here, yeah, and
Yeah,
spirituality, because I'm also looking at the history of how the hell do we end up thinking like this, yeah, because we have these thousands of years of all different types of indoctrination that have caused us to believe in something more and better than what we already are and have, and that is the fundamental problem that we're facing. And so, what do we do with these things? What are you doing when you're on Facebook and you've got a husband or a wife or a friend or partner at home, and you're looking at other people and imagining them to be your partner or whatever? You are escaping reality. Just like the meditator is escaping reality when he conjures up different experiences, you are escaping the real life that you have. Now, why are you trying to escape the real life that you have? Brings us back to the fundamental problem, is that through medicine, through religion. Through medicine, we've learned to dislike certain physical states, and through religion, we've learned to dislike certain emotional states. Let's say, just as a very broad statement. Yeah. So we have been taught to be against pain and distress. Whereas, and we completely misunderstood the significance of these in our life, which I keep coming back to, because it's a fundamental problem. So as soon as we feel pain or distress in relationship with the other person, we very easily overlook our part in that. We very easily overlook our need for growth and development and self-inquiry in that. Yeah, we don't take on our part, our responsibility, what we are really feeling inside of ourselves as a reaction and a judgment of that person. Yeah, and we find it okay to project our problems onto them, say it's all their fault, so I'll get away from them, and then we project our happiness, or our potential happiness, onto some other person, saying they're the ones who are going to make me happy. And we live in that dream. And we don't really want to have a real life with that person, because we know deep down we're going to find out that it's not real. That doesn't matter what person you hook up with, you're going to be back in touch with the same problems, because the problem is not them. The problem is in you. Yeah. And the bigger problem is that you see yourself as a problem that you want to get rid of, or you want to escape from, rather than a problem that, as a body, as an organic creature, as nature itself, as a part of nature, you are fully equipped to process those types of problems, whether they be physical health or mental health. And it all comes back to learning how to feel your pain and not judge it, not fight it, not criticize it, not suppress it, not escape it, not deny it, not pretend it's something else, but live with that part of your life in a way that is conducive to the healing process and the developmental of you, of your relationship. And therefore, as time goes on, your relationship grows deeper and stronger, rather than there's no need for a relationship really in most cases to divorce or to break up. We're looking at it the wrong way. We're looking at life the wrong way. Life is there to be lived. We are life. However, whatever comes out of us, we need to learn how to live with that. And that's exactly what I'm firstly helping people see. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is telling you all about yourself, even in different parts of your body. Every part of your body operates in a different way. And has a different role, expresses a different thought, feeling process. My mouth is, let's say your throat is for communication. Your throat, your voice box, and your mouth is, if you have troubles in that area, then the chances are you're having some sort of trouble expressing yourself honestly and truthfully, because you're too frightened to, or something, and so you're wanting to. It's just a really basic example. So you get tensions build up in this area because of the conflict we have with yourself lying, or the distress you have with not being heard by other people and understood by other people. So you get problems here. And so if you come back to that distress, you're getting in touch with the distress that very real situation of not being heard is causing you, and you're able to resolve that for and within yourself, that distress. Yeah. And this takes you deeper into understanding your need to be understood, your need to be heard, because your real need to be heard and understood is not by other people, it's by you. So the more you go back into you, the more you're hearing you, the more you're understanding you, the more you're relieving the problems of your throat of not being heard and understood. It's just one body-mind connection that I wanted to bring into it as a simple example, where if we have sexual problems, we'll have those feelings in our genitals. If we have difficulty with seeing, then we'll have problems in our eyes. A difficulty with seeing the world as it is, we're not facing up to things, and we may end up having problems with our eyes. And if we have grief, where everyone knows this one. Ultimately, when you feel deeply sad, deeply grieving, you feel it in your lungs, in your chest. So every part of your body, when you feel enraged and angry or frightened, they're both much the same, you feel that in your stomach. Predominantly, then it obviously radiates out. But each part of your body expresses from that part everything else that we can't end up expressing in life. And so the app helps people really start to, and I help people very much start to reconnect with what they're feeling and how they're thinking with the associated body parts, and takes them deeper into knowing themselves in there. Sounds very, it's very deep. It's a very, because it really reconnects you with, oh my God, that is what my kidney does. What does my kidney do? My kidney, it filters the bad from the rubbish from the healthy stuff. Yeah. Well, am I having any trouble filtering the bullshit from the reality of the world? If I am, I probably have some strain on my kidneys. Just a little simple example without going into great depths with it. But the thing that happens is, because we're disconnected from these feelings, I talked about the stomach before, yeah? We're disconnected from these feelings. When we get fear in our stomach, or we have an underlying rage in our stomach, there's always this sensation going on, and we mistake it for feeling hungry, because it's an interesting thing. Hunger often feels a little bit like agitation or anxiety. Yeah,
that's why they call it hangry.
That's why we call it hangry. Yeah, or we're angry. Yeah, anxiety, agitation, up until rage can live in there, and rage is always the opposite of fear. Actually, you're enraged primarily because you're terrified. Yeah, and so underneath rage is terror, fear. Underneath anger is fear, and so on. So it's the same thing. So when you have that feeling and you're not resolving that feeling, you have that feeling of fear and you mistake it for hunger. What happens is you want to eat. Now, when you eat, it numbs out that it fills up the tummy, so you stop feeling for a little while what's going on in there. But very soon it comes back again, because you didn't actually get the right feeling. You didn't act on the right feeling. You didn't associate what you were doing with the right feeling. So often we express our fear, we express ourselves in action, thinking that I want this. So eating becomes addictive, becomes an addiction when every time you eat, you don't actually satisfy the feeling you have in there, because you're not wanting to eat. You're needing to resolve your fear or your rage, and nothing satisfies it. So no matter how much you eat, you're not satisfying that feeling. So you become more agitated and more driven to eat more. Yeah. So we like smoking drugs or drinking alcohol. We have pain in there, and so we suppress that by smoking drugs, for example. But it doesn't. It only suppresses the way we feel for a while, but it's not actually coming back to connecting us with the feelings we need to feel. And the very last one I was going to say, because it's a big one, when I came up to where I am now, up in the northern hemisphere of the world, I came here because I knew there's a huge problem, a well-known problem, sex addiction. Yeah. And so a sex addict, for example, will have sex addiction, and this is all over the world. What do we mean by sex addiction is when you feel such a pain inside of yourself, or such a sensation inside of yourself, that you must have sex. If you can't have sex, you're left with tremendous distress. This shows that this is not really about sex, but about pain. But it will be sexual pain. That's why you're connecting it to having sex to resolve that pain. But because it's about pain, and generally about pain that you actually have from childhood, or sometime in your life where you've been abused, then the sex addict can have as much sex as they like, but they're not actually understanding that that feeling is not an urge for sex at all. That feeling, and the more I have sex out of the feeling of pain behind that's driving it, the addiction gets stronger, because it's not actually satisfying. This never satisfies me. I never get satisfaction, because the action of having sex is not really the action you're supposed to be having. In fact, it's the opposite. Yeah. What you're supposed to be doing is feeling your pain, not having more sex. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've already hurting yourself with sex in that way, because you're having sex for the wrong reasons, and so the sex addict becomes very addicted to the activity of sex, but never really through continuing that activity, any addiction, any addictive activity. This is how we end up with addictions. We're not actually ever able to satisfy a feeling because we're mistaking the feeling for us wanting a very different action than the one we're performing.
Something that I found really useful when I was going through the app, and it really clicked after we spent some time together, was understanding what you mean by feeling. And I'm wondering if you can explain the difference about sort of between feeling and emotion, and why this is so important. Because I think because everybody's got their own interpretation of what that means. And I think in the world that most of us listening are brought up in, what we think when we hear feeling is it's our cognitive or intellectual interpretation of the feeling rather than the feeling itself. And so once you had explained that to me in the way that you do, I found the app, the Undo app, which is fantastic. Everybody should download it. Highly recommend. That app became a lot more useful once I really understood that. So can you kind of take us through that?
Yeah, it's very important. As a initial point is that we describe our function as a human being, and when we do, we break it up into many things. But what I want to emphasize is these many things don't actually exist in isolation to one another. We are a whole functioning being, and you will not separate one thing from another. You will not separate ultimately feeling from thinking. It's just that you can overthink to such a point that you lose contact with what you're feeling in your body. Yeah, because you're so preoccupied with thinking. Yep. So we talk about different parts of the human being, which are only for the purpose of our attempt to communicate these things. So I'm going to use the word emotion, feeling, the words emotion, feelings, and thinking in a very specific way, which may not be the same as other people have heard from other people. The reason I'm using it the way I am is because I'm doing my best to greatly simplify something that has been made ridiculously complex to the point that it is of no use to anybody. And that people ask me, what is the difference? Or like you said, you didn't know the difference. Why don't we know the difference? Because there's so many complicated concepts around it that just don't help us to understand ourselves as a functioning creature. Yeah. I need to be able to bring it back to myself and how I function and what I can feel happening within myself before I can really say I understand this rather than I can comprehend it intellectually. Yeah. So what happens is we have feelings. Let's use the feeling of grief. The feeling of grief is very clearly a physical sensation in the body. It's a feeling, which is physically felt. Yep. It's physically felt, and you could say that physical feeling is also could be called emotion. Yeah? But only from the point of view of thinking there's a difference between that the physical sensation is not all-encompassing. The physical sensation is all-encompassing. Within grief, there is sadness. Within grief, there is loss. Within grief, and that feeling in our chest, within that, or many feelings can be dissected out of that. But it's all there. Yeah. So the feeling of grief, the feeling of sadness, the feeling of loss, the feeling of being alone. Yeah. So many you could describe them, but there's no need. You don't need to do this. This tends to get us away from the simple physical sensation of grief. Yeah, that I'm feeling. Now, what happens when I think about grief? I react to my grief. I don't want this grief is so painful that I react to it. I react to feeling this way And then I also react to whatever has caused me to feel this way. So what is reaction? Reaction is my thinking, my judgment about the feeling of grief and my judgment about the facts of life. So the facts of life is my friend has died. I don't like those facts. So I am at odds with those facts. And I don't like how it makes me feel. And that's why I don't like those facts. So I do my best to get rid of the feeling so that I can get on with life again. Because it's the only reason I can't cope with what's happened is because of how it makes me feel. So I think I have to suppress and get over that feeling in order to get back on with life. But this is incorrect. Now, what is correct is that when I am thinking my story in reaction to the grief, which is the feeling, I am now prolonging a state unnaturally. I'm connecting my story, which is thinking, with my feeling, which is physically felt. And this connection of thought and the story, the reaction against the fact of life that I don't like and the reaction against how it's made me feel, this thought in connection with feeling equals emotion. So when you have purely a feeling, it's perfectly fine. It's a relief to feel. When you bring in the story, it causes the feeling to become a major problem for you. Yeah, you add.
Well, and I think as well, it gives life beyond the feeling.
Yeah,
like
very good.
The story keeps the feeling alive in a way that it maybe shouldn't.
Exactly. It prolongs that feeling beyond its natural duration. Yeah, so it prolongs that feeling by taking it into an emotionalization of that feeling and giving it a life that it doesn't actually want or have. The body doesn't want that. The organism doesn't want that. It's actually harmful to the body because that's what you can't get out of that. Sometimes a person will live the whole life grieving. They're not really in touch with their grief, the feeling of grief. They're now caught up in the emotionalization of that feeling, which is connecting the feeling with the thought process, with the story. And that goes on and on and on and on and on. And this isn't, not only does it make it unbearable because it exaggerates it, but it makes it impossible for it to end. And that is what you could call suffering. Yeah. That's when you suffer.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So emotion prolongs suffering. Emotion prolongs suffering, whereas feeling brings it to an end. There is a type of suffering and grief, but not the one that we are overwhelmed by. Yeah. So when we emotionalize any feeling, anger, whatever it happens to be, any feeling that we have in our body, when we emotionalize it, we exaggerate it because we emotionalize it by thinking about it. The thought plus the feeling gives birth to emotion. And emotion is a very different thing, a very different animal to feeling because it is not the real feeling anymore. It's an exaggeration of the feeling. It's a perversion of the feeling, perverted by your story about having that feeling inside of you. So it really gives it a whole life of its own. And this is fantasy. And it hurts, it's very painful, but this is fantasy. Our perceptions create fantasies. So thinking becomes a fantasy. Yeah. So that fantasy, we can live in that fantasy. And the fantasy, I'll say, is because we think that we wish that person didn't die. Yeah. And we think that we can't cope with the loss of that person. But what that puts us in touch with is the degree to which we become attached to that person's existence during the time of being with them, and the degree to which we've actually become like that person, and that person has, in a sense, merged with us, has become part of our very own existence whilst they are with us. Yeah, we are affected by them. This is completely natural. Yeah, this is attachment in its natural form. Yeah, we become we become more like the person that we are close to. Yeah, as and over long periods of time, it continues. This is not this doesn't have to be losing yourself, but when we lose that person, what we're left with actually is we're left with the presence of that person, what they had become within ourselves, and we feel that in ourselves. That person is gone. They do not exist at all, at all. And regardless, losing that person, we start thinking about things like reincarnation, or he's gone to heaven and so on. And this causes us to disconnect from our loss. So these belief systems are incredibly harmful because they don't enable a person to honestly feel their loss and therefore heal from their loss. Now, very importantly with grieving, what is healing a loss of a person who's been very much a part of your life? A mother losing a child, a husband losing a wife, or whatever, brother losing a sister and so on. You're losing a part of yourself, and that part of yourself has become obsolete and irrelevant now that that person through that you relate to through that presence in yourself no longer exists. So that person doesn't exist anymore, and they don't actually, so their existence remaining in you is not really you. It's what you became in relationship with that person. By feeling that grief, that loss inside of yourself, what happens is your identification with the feeling of that person in you, which is how we identify with another person. They cause us to feel a certain way, and that makes them important to us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So our identification with that person inside of us, within us, has to die now with the person because they don't exist anymore. Otherwise, we'll just continue to cause ourselves pain and suffering. Yeah. And so we are equipped, the human organism is equipped like any other animal on the planet. We feel grief. And when we feel that grief, we are actually coming to terms with, at a felt level, at a feeling sensorial level, not at an intellectual level, but at a deep feeling level. In the way the body processes pain, we are coming to terms with the facts that we don't like outside of ourselves. We are coming to terms with and able to eventually accept those facts that that person no longer exists. Until we get over our feeling of that person existing inside of us, as part of us, we will still pine for that person's presence. As we feel that, so we will find the feeling of that person gradually dissipates from ourselves. And what happens? We end up with nothing more than what we were before that person came into our life. Not meaning we don't remember them, not meaning they haven't had some good effect on us, but we do sort of, getting attached to a person, we do sort of become, very much like that person in certain ways. And when that finishes through the grieving process, then we find we're right back to what we were without that person. And the same goes for intimate relationships. When we break up from a relationship, a long-term relationship, if we don't grieve that loss, if we don't get over our anger and our resentment and so forth by feeling it, if we don't get over that, we'll take all that shit into the next relationship and impose that on the next person. So we're taking our baggage. What is our baggage? That which we have not resolved from our last relationship. And it's not really right to put that on the next person. And we're not even taking ourselves into that next relationship. We're taking ourselves and our past partner into that relationship in a way, within ourselves. So when we resolve that from ourselves, then I think, and only then, are we really ready to give ourselves 100% to the next person without comparing them with the last person, without wanting them to be a replacement of the last person. Yeah. And so in this way, the grieving process, the feeling process is absolutely crucial in our life if we are to repeatedly get over our attachments and clean ourselves of something that has come to an end, therefore get over the pain of that, and therefore find ourselves without pain of the loss of one person, therefore able to accept the fact of their loss and stop fantasizing about reincarnation and heavens and they're still around and they're floating, mum's still here in spirit. Stop all that fantasy, which is just a projection of our unresolved pain. We won't even think of mum in spirit. If the spirit of mum has been resolved from our own system in the grieving process, we won't be wanting that anymore. We will be fully accepting of the endings in life. And this is so hard for people. People don't realize the importance of endings in life and what they really should be doing to go through those endings and actually end things instead of just getting more and more accumulation, more and more stuff internally and externally, to the point that we're just a mess of many different people. We become like a party or, like a gathering inside.
It's a funny
of
way
us.
to put it.
Yeah, and it's not a healthy party. Yeah, we become we develop various personalities, various personality traits. We become, in some ways, schizophrenics. And we become very unstable as we gather more and more pain, gather and hold on to more and more pain. We need to be able to heal our pain. And it doesn't take long. This is not a lengthy process. Feeling grief is a very, actually, rapid process. Resisting grief and resisting the facts of a loss is the emotionalization of the feeling of grief. And that is what prolongs it and doesn't enable you to feel that grief. And feeling is something you can do whilst you still get on with your day-to-day life. Once you learn how to feel, you can feel the loss and still operate in day-to-day life very effectively. It's not that debilitating.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, to sort of simplify. It's like feeling is the physical sensation in your body. Emotion is physical sensation plus story, and thinking is just story.
And thinking is just story. Yeah. So there's two forms of thinking. Yeah. That is thinking that is your thinking. This is actually important as we're on this topic because it completes the whole picture. Thinking that is your thinking originates as a sensation in your body, as a feeling or a sensation in your body. That sensation or feeling is all about you. That sensation or feeling is all the information you have in yourself about the world outside of you and about other people. Yeah. So that feeling that you gather and hold inside of you is a wealth of information. Now, that is the origin of our thinking. So sensation, as sensation builds up inside of us, it becomes an expression. We feel something and it becomes an expression of us. Yep. So in expressing that, when I'm talking to you out of something that is an expression of me, then you get the feeling of me coming with that. Yeah? And you get also from the other person will get some understanding. Oh, this is how you will get to know me if I really know myself, because I'm feeling myself. It's not anything that difficult. We all know ourselves. We'll talk a bit about this later, but we just pretend we don't just because we don't like what it is. But we know. We damn well know.
Yeah.
We just can't come to terms with it. And I'm helping people
Just
come
in
to terms
denial
with
of it.
We're in denial of it, which proves we know it. Which proves we know it. You can't deny something if you don't know it exists. So, yeah. But so we bloody well know. Yeah. There's no such thing as subconscious or unconscious, but I'll explain that as time goes on. It's just that we operate at different levels. What we feel, what we only feel inside of ourselves, we call that, sorry, I'm diversing. We call that unconscious, but it's only unconscious as far as our cognitive thinking is concerned. It's not unconscious as far as how it feels to be us is concerned in our body. So in that sense, I find there's no way of being. You are not an unconscious conscious being. You are fully alive, but you just break yourself up into many bits, and it's conveniently so you don't hurt yourself so much because you hate yourself, you judge yourself. Yeah. So it's a self-protective mechanism. Back to what I was saying, the thinking that is mine is the thoughts that come of my own wealth of understanding, which is digested and which is a part of me and an expression of me. So originally, why do we talk? Why do we think and talk? Is to express ourselves, is to communicate ourselves to another person. Yeah. Now, when I'm communicating myself to another person, it has to be thoughts that originate in my own sensations, in my own body. Yeah, these are my thoughts. These are about me. That which I have imbibed in myself, that which is really part of me originally, becomes an original expression of me. Yep. Now, that which I've been told about myself and taught becomes first a reaction to me, a way in which I've learned to think about myself and belief systems and so forth. This outside in is a reaction to certain things in me. I'm taught to react to feelings of me. I'm taught to think of myself as not good enough. I'm taught to think of myself as needing to improve. Yeah. So if I need to improve, there must be something wrong. So fundamentally, rather than just being the fullness of me coming into expression, whether it be anger, sadness, grief, happiness, whatever it is, but it's coming into expression without reaction, therefore it's harmless. I'm angry, but I'm not going to attack you with that anger unless I've suppressed that anger, denied that anger, and I've judged that anger as bad. But if I can let myself feel that anger, it's a relief to feel it. And it's also informing me of something perhaps in my world that's happening to me that I should be angry about. Yeah. It doesn't mean I should then hurt someone else. So, but I have to be able to feel before thinking. If I'm not feeling before thinking and it just goes straight into thinking, then this is a problem. And this tends to be because thoughts that we've learned from others don't come from our own feelings, from our own physical existence. They come from the outside. They're influences. They tell us about ourselves, and they become the thoughts that are not expressions of ourselves, and they are not communications of ourselves into the world with other people and between one another, because you can do the same thing back to me. Yeah, you can express yourself in a healthy way, and we can have a really resolving type of conflict if we're expressing ourselves, not attacking each other. Whereas reaction is attacking myself. I'm complaining about myself. And my reactionary thoughts complain primarily about how I feel, and secondly, about whatever made me feel that way, or whatever I have presumed has made me feel that way. Yeah. So whatever's triggered me, in other words. So reactionary thinking is harmful. And reactionary thinking is what makes us suffer everything else, suffer everything in the world. Yeah, even physical pain. You look at an animal that gets hurt in a fight. How do they lay there and just get over it? How come they're not suffering tremendously? I can't prove this because, well, I know how I operate as an animal, so I suppose I can, in a way, associate with this. As an animal, if I'm not thinking about my pain, I find it's something that I can bear. It's something that I can process from its worst feelings through to its healing. Yeah. And eventually it heals. So it is something I can cope with quite well. But when I start reacting to it, when I get frightened of it, when I start freaking out, when I'm mentally reacting, this reaction causes a suffering of that condition in me, whether it's a mild condition like distrust, although that can be quite disturbing, or a broken leg, or a burning cancer, whatever it happens to be, or a sickness, or feeling nauseous, or and to whatever extent that goes to. If I can feel that in my body, I'm fully connected. I am immersed in it. But if I'm reacting to it, I'm on the outside of it, trying not to be drawn into it, and I'm fighting it. And that fight is based on fear of it, opinions about it, judgment of it. And that is reactionary thinking that keeps us once removed from ourselves. Those thoughts are not our own. Those thoughts are what we have been taught to think about the world and ourselves, whereas the thoughts that emerge from within our body initially are our own thoughts. This is an expression of me. This has come from me. So I hope people see the difference. Reactionary thinking is, what prolongs all feelings beyond our abilities, and exaggerates all feelings, all sensations, all experiences beyond our natural ability to cope with those. And so we overwhelm ourselves with overthinking. And when there's pain inside of ourselves and we're reacting, we then, through our thinking, we look for an escape. Yeah? We look for a meditation technique. We look for a drug. We look for psychedelics. We look for belief systems. Another addiction is we look for knowledge. The intellectual looks for knowledge, but that knowledge not being about themselves never satisfies them. not at a real
I can
human
so
level.
relate to that statement.
Can't you? Yeah. The intellectual is always looking for more and more knowledge. Give me more and more knowledge, because the knowledge and the way in which they're getting their knowledge is from the outside. It's not about them. It's not from them. It's not relatable. So I don't disagree with all the intellectual or scientific or theoretical things out there. They just don't mean anything to me. They're not relevant to me. They're unrelatable. They're just unnecessary. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we can get addictions happening this way. And this too is a reaction without realizing it. We get so intoxicated with our study that we maintain a disconnect from our body. Yeah. Like when we're on a computer, we remain a disconnect. So the information era that we're in, this information is planned obsolescence. Yeah.
Yes.
It won't last for very long. The buzz will only last for a moment, because you're in the intoxication of how clever I am. I understand this, and how much less fear I feel now that I won't be judged for being stupid and not understanding or not knowing it. Yeah. And so it gives us a temporary relief from our fear, which is an intoxication. But because that information on the internet and so forth is all propaganda and all influence anyway, most of it, is influence and propaganda, although we're using the internet today, and, but you don't know that I'm not full of people listening, I don't want you to believe me. I want you to find this out for yourself, and I'm just giving you a way to find this out for yourself. Yeah, don't just believe me. Don't just sit here and be entertained intellectually. That's just a cop-out, yeah? You need to do this for yourself. But our information era is giving me more and more feed. This is just a drug, and it keeps you completely disconnected from the pain of emptiness inside of you, that none of this knowledge, none of this information is satisfying. It's not giving you the information you need. When you get the information you need, when you get the information that as a living organism you need, you feel the effects and the satisfaction of that, and your thinking comes to an end. It comes again, but in that moment, you stop searching, you stop thinking, and you just are able to be fulfilled in the sensory, physical experience of having a need finally met.
I love that. And I think as well too, like one of the things that is with that intellectual, academic, mentally driven society that we're in is that, we've got people that are, and it's often referred to as mental masturbation. You know, you just keep going on the information collection and information input and wonder why the problem itself doesn't actually change, because we're so focused on just the data, the science, and that's it's the world we're in. It's all this mental stimulation, but very little feeling and physical action and moving the body through time and space to change. And I think that is really where the rubber hits the road with your stuff, because it's trying to get us out of our head. And so I guess for everybody listening, like, where can they find you online? Because every time you speak, I want to talk about 37 different ideas.
Okay.
And so just so we can point. Yes, just so we can point people in the right direction to start practicing the actual feeling and getting back into their bodies, because I really feel very connected to your ideas, and so and your content and your app. So where can they find the Undo app? Where can they get more of you? Where are all the things on the internet that they can get involved in your work?
Okay, thank you. So just one, I won't go too far, but just one point. We're looking for the answer. We're looking for the solution outside of the problem of our distress and pain. The solution's not outside the problem. As Einstein also said once, I understand, is that we create a problem, but the solution to that problem is not going to come about through the same way. We can't approach the problem and the solution the same way. Yeah. So the problem is we think, and we overthink, and we think in the wrong way. Yeah. Now, the more thinking is not going to solve the problem. Okay, it's not more knowledge is not going to solve the problem. The problem and the solution are in different places. The problem is in the thinking and in the overthinking and in the knowledge, in the information. But the solution, because it disconnects us from our sadness, our feeling, our humanity. The solution is in the problem itself, is what you currently see as the problem. What you currently see as the problem is the condition you're in. The solution is going into the feeling of that. So the problem is caused by thinking, is not resolved by thinking, it's resolved by feeling, because it's the feeling of distress in you that drives that thinking. That's what keeps fueling that thinking. Your pain keeps fueling that search. Don't search. Come back to the end of the search in what's driving that search, which is the feeling of emptiness, the feeling of pain, whatever it may be. So the solution is in what you're currently seeing as a problem. And as you come into contact with that feeling, you will discover what you thought was a problem is your solution. So where you
I like it.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that. Just to clarify that last point you brought up. So the undoapp.com is online and app stores, and Android and the other one. Apple, thank you. Apple, Apple and the king. So Apple and Android. And now that you'll get by going to undoapp.com. So undoapp.com, that will get you the app. And I charge for the app, but the first part of it, there's a couple of free parts to it, but then it's a course really, and it's a really in-depth course. And if you really want to get deep in your meditation in a very, very simple and direct way, in a way that actually will make a difference, not just take you on a searching journey, but will make a difference, this is working. I've done a lot of tests with people, testing how they're going, and it's working. It's doing exactly what I want to do. The main thing it's doing is it's helping people to accept themselves in every way that they are. And that is really important, not in an idealistic way, but they're starting to see the truth in the fact that the way they are is the way they need to be, and they're starting to really appreciate that by doing the app. And that is the main thing I wanted to do, because people are hurting because of the way they think about themselves, and it's wrong. Now, the next one is, which I haven't talked about at all today, is meditation retreats that I run. And these, if you really, especially if you really want to get the real depth and also work with me face to face over a long period of time, you can do them between 7 days and 21 days. So they're really serious meditation retreats, but they're not difficult in the sense of the meditation itself, because this is a very direct approach to the meditation in the body. It's not difficult, but the only thing that's difficult is the same thing that's difficult in your life today, and that is you continue to feel the disturbances within your system that you are yet to resolve, but at least on retreat you get to resolve them for yourself by feeling them. And that is, and I have a website for that which tells you all about those. Quiet Retreats is one word, .co. So QUIETREATS.co. And the last one, I think there's a little website called Matt Zoltan. It's one word, MATTZOLTAN.com. COM, M for Matthew. And if you're not familiar with that name, then you're not listening. you got that's my younger self. and
this is future me.
It's like, I don't know, when I first saw Matt, I went, oh my God, that used to be the colour of my hair. And I used to be a bit like that. So that colour.
That's literally the first thing you said when we first met. You were like, oh my God.
Yeah, oh my God. I'm looking back at myself. What's going on here? Well, this is what you've got to look forward to, Matt.
Well, I think you are just a fantastic human. So I'm very happy that this is what I've got to look forward to. But all those links you just, I was going to say all those links you shared, I'm going to put them in the show notes below so that everybody's got access to them and they can click on them. And I encourage everyone to do that. And you were just going to add one thing there?
Yeah, one thing was, and we are looking for an investor. So if anybody resonates with what we're doing, preferably we're looking for an investor who also has skills in the app industry or in the industry that we can call on. But money is a very expensive thing to build and run an app, and we're going to keep doing it. You'd be surprised what it costs to build and run an app, a good one, a good quality one.
Yeah, no doubt.
So this would be, and we're just on the verge of getting very popular now. It's only really launching in the last, properly in the last 12 months. Got it really, really looking nice and working well. And our team is really good. There's a team of 8 of us that are really working as a group of people involved in this approach to life you would expect would work together. So it's a really nice team, and I love that.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing? Yes, of course, Facebook, Instagram, there's Reels, there's all that stuff happening on the internet of little talks from me and, all sorts of things. But if you start with the app, the reason I'm encouraging that is because that is something you can begin to do, not just read about, not just listen to, but you can do that for yourself. And you need to do something. You need to act. You need action, not just ideas. Yeah. So
I think that's fantastic. And I personally have jumped on the app. I've listened to a bunch of the stuff. I've done the sadness one a few times. I've done grief. I've done anger. And it's still a lot of the app I need to explore. But yeah, I would definitely back this and recommend it to people listening and really support your work. And it really resonates with me. And it actually really does feel like it's finally something that actually moves the needle rather than fills my head with romantic ideas about places I'll never arrive without, maybe being a monk for 40 years or something like that. Yeah. I really, really love the work that you're doing. And I thank you for sharing your time with us here today.
That's my pleasure, as you can see, and we need this help, and also, it's really good that you put the time look into the work a bit and, the way we've connected together. I can even feel this time, since the last time I spoke to you, I can feel how much more understanding there is between us. It takes a bit to get this, But as you said before, this is not a journey to an end result. The hardest thing is to break down that delusion of enlightenment, that it's something you reach. No, it's just something you face up to. It's what you already are, and what makes it hard to face up to everything that you are is judgment and criticism and wrong thinking, reactionary thinking. It's easy to face up to that when you start to see that everything that you are is exactly as you should be. And living with that and working with that on a day-by-day basis can be really difficult if you've got really difficult problems. But you will find that is where you will come into true connection, reconnection with yourself as a body, in the body, and really understand yourself from the inside out. And that requires your ability to physically feel, to really feel. You'd be surprised how disconnected we've become from feeling. It's the most difficult thing, and yet it's happening all the time. And as soon as it happens, we react to it, we bounce off it, and we run away from it. Next time, just stay with the feeling in your body, wherever it happens to be. And as long as you're with that feeling, you can be sure that feeling is actually in a process. As soon as you start feeling it, you're starting to decrease the intensity and the misery of that feeling just by feeling it. And honestly, I'll make a really big statement. There is absolutely no other way. Feelings are not meant to be thought about. They are meant to be felt.
Amazing. Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I just want to keep talking to you, but obviously we've got people who've got lives and stuff like that. But to just wrap up finally with a final thought of everything that we've talked about today, or everything that you've learned in your entire journey, what is one piece of health information that you think people need to know about that's not common knowledge?
There is no such thing as good health or bad health. You only come up with that idea in comparison with other people. But we are all in the condition we're in as an expression of what we are yet to resolve within ourselves once we learn how. The condition you're in is there for a reason. It is not bad health. It is not good health. Even your mental health. Once you go deeper into the feelings behind that, you will discover why you've had this confusion of thought or feelings, and you will have empathy for yourself, whilst before you just had anger at yourself and criticism of yourself. The same with your physical body conditions, your physical, purely mechanical conditions. These are there to guide you, keep you from going to extremes. Yeah. If you feel a bit of pain or a bit of a problem somewhere, using the app, you will learn what that really is about and how that is actually your body, the intelligence in your body keeping a balance. So pain and illness, our health, is not our enemy. It is a perfectly natural process. It's become a problem because we've made it a problem by exaggerating it, by reacting to it. And all the therapies we've created in the world, or most of them, I should say, are about getting rid of these conditions rather than integrating these conditions in our life. So that about health. And the other thing is that when we come back to, once you learn to feel again, you then are in touch with the sensations of your body, and they change all the time. And part of the reason they change all the time is because they are a constant off-gassing or releasing of distresses that build up in the body. Once you're living at that level of actually in touch with the sensations or inside the sensations of your own body, all of these sensations that are going on are catching the distress or the stress at its very first point, rather than letting it increase until it becomes such a problem that we get sick or in massive pain or have accidents. Yeah. So when you're feeling the sensations at that level, you are constantly keeping yourself in good health. Or at first you may be getting yourself into good health because you've got to catch up. But once you catch up, you'll find feeling the sensations in your body is the second thing that I think is most important. I made two things, sorry, but they are related. So you've got to learn to feel again. Get out of just being in your thinking and pay attention to feeling. And feeling is how we activate two things: the healing process and the information process that comes out of our body.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, for your time, for your energy. And I know everybody's brains are melting right now. They probably have to listen to this a couple of times. So thank you so much. And yeah, we'll organize something again soon because there's so much gold we've got to dig out.
Oh, good. I'd love to do this again with you. That would be great. It's really fun. Yeah.
It's so fun.
It's so
Thank
fun.
you.
Yeah. Thank you, Matty.
All right. Well, no worries. We'll catch you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.